Welcome to tonight's special meeting of the Broomfield City Council. Information on how to watch, attend, and participate, as well as agendas, minutes, and recordings can be found on Broomfield's website at www.broomfield.org/council meetings. The public may also participate by providing public comment in person. Public comment for the item that is on the agenda will be limited to 90 minutes per item, the only item. The first 1 through 15 participants in the queue have 3 minutes to speak. The next 16 to 25 participants in the queue have 2 minutes to speak. If time remains, the next 26 plus participants in the queue have 1 minute to speak. For our hard of hearing residents present, we have wireless headsets available through our AV team in the back of the council chambers. We will now proceed with tonight's special meeting. The special meeting of the City Council is called to order. Mayor Castriata is out of town. Per the council rules, when the mayor is absent, the mayor pro tem presides over the meeting. There are 7 council members here, which means that we have a quorum. Will everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The only item on the agenda is a discussion of personnel matters related to the city and county manager. On March 25th, 2025, council voted 5-4 to censure Councilmember Marsh Holshan for statements of negligence, sabotage, mismanagement he made about the city and county manager. These statements were made in an email he had sent to another council member that became public through an open records request. During that meeting, Councilmember Marsh Holshan withdrew his use of gross to describe negligence, but stood behind the rest of his statements. He said he had evidence and claims and that he would use to substantiate his words. Council that night discussed going into an executive session, but determined that a special meeting would be more appropriate given the late hour. On March 27, 2025, Councilmember Ward, on behalf of himself and Council members Delgadillo, Anderson, and myself, requested a special meeting to be held tonight. This is permitted under the charter and is a proper way to call for a special meeting. The reason for calling this meeting is a personnel discussion that will provide an opportunity for Councilmember Marsh Holshan to present the evidence he said he had to substantiate his claims about the city and county manager, and then to have a chance for questions and discussion. Under the Colorado Open Meetings Law, discussion of personnel matters can take place in a closed executive session. However, if the employee who is the subject of the session requests that the discussion take place in an open meeting, there is no executive session. This discussion must be held in public. Manager Hoffman, you had indicated that night that you wanted this discussion to take place in public. Is this still your request?
It is.
Given her request, we will continue the discussion in public. We don't have a staff presentation tonight. This is a personnel matter, so we will hear from Manager Hoffman first as the employee that is the subject of this meeting. Then Councilmember Marsh Holshan can make his statement. Following his statement, I'll ask any of my council colleagues, first those who called for this meeting, who have prepared a statement. Then we'll take public comment, followed by council discussion. After we hear from Manager Hoffman and Councilmember Marsh Holshan and other council members' prepared statements initially, and in their effort to keep for tonight's meeting, I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. If council members are given an opportunity to speak for a second time on an item, they should limit their comments communication to 2 minutes. Manager Hoffman, please go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, council member, and members of the community. And thank you for those of you that have shown up tonight. Your presence matters. City managers and staff work from what we know as facts, policy, budget, law. Elected officials often act on what they believe values, perspectives, and lived experience. That's not a flaw. It's the nature of our system. But when belief replaces fact, perception replaces data, and frustration replaces feedback, we don't create an understanding gap. We create an environment where misinformation becomes the default. Tonight, I rise to speak not only about trust, professionalism, and accountability, but also about the responsibility that comes with being in the public eye and the consequences of abandoning that responsibility. In recent weeks, I've been the target of sustained public accusations. claims of negligence, intentional sabotage, and assertions that I have somehow evaded my accountability in my role. These are not fleeting remarks or expressions of disagreement. They are formal, damaging charges levied repeatedly in public spaces by a lawyer who clearly understands the weight and legal definitions of those words. It's been suggested that these statements originated in a private email made public through a core request. However, we must acknowledge the reality. Our email platform is not private. It is a public record. The same platform that was used just weeks earlier in a Quora request that revealed the council member's misuse of a city P card. He knew the risks of disclosure, and yet he chose that medium to level serious accusations. To pretend otherwise is disingenuous. Even more troubling is that these same claims have been repeated, both verbally and in writing, across public forums, well beyond the confines of any email. This is not an isolated comment that became public. It's a narrative that has been actively pushed, amplified, and sustained. There's a clear and important distinction between voicing concerns and making accusations. Expressing frustrations is part of leadership. So is accountability. But formal accusations, especially those as serious as these, require evidence. They carry weight and they come with consequences. To treat them as offhand remarks or shield them under the guise of opinion while continuing to repeat them publicly is both irresponsible and damaging, not only to me, but for the integrity of this governing body. What began as a vague expression of frustration is now being used to justify serious allegations without a single piece of evidence to support them. Phrases like "I was frustrated," "I didn't mean it in the legal sense," or more recently, simply calling it "my opinion," are now being used to walk back responsibility while still repeating the claims publicly again and again. To suggest that the decision to go public was only made once a censure was proposed ignores the operative word "until." To say someone else's action triggered this response reflects a complete lack of accountability. What I've practiced these last 6 weeks is restraint. I've demonstrated discipline out of respect for this council, for my team, and for my community. Despite the constant public commentary, I have not responded in kind. I've not posted on social media, nor have I contacted the press or issued public statements in my defense. Instead, I waited for this formal forum, one requested by a council member and supported by those in attendance tonight. These accusations question not only my professional judgment, but my personal integrity. Let me be clear. I have no issue with disagreement. I have no issue with scrutiny. It is part of this job. But I will not accept baseless accusations made without evidence, repeatedly, without accountability, and weaponized in the public arena for motives that appear far more political than principled. Since the email was made public, I have made clear professionally, directly, and in writing that I am open to a meeting once there's accountability. I've consistently requested documentation, data, or examples that substantiate these serious claims to be provided first. To suggest that I have been unwilling to meet is a mischaracterization. I've communicated at every point that I'm ready to engage in conversation. As soon as the council member either produces evidence he has publicly referenced or acknowledges and redacts the allegations. In any professional workplace, we misstep. We speak out of turn, or we act in a way that crosses a line, but we own it. We acknowledge it, we apologize, and we move forward thoughtfully and intentionally in service of this organization, not ourselves. That standard we ask of every employee, I ask of myself, the standard that I've always held myself to. Despite multiple opportunities, no evidence has been provided, no apology has been offered, and the situation only continues to be minimized through repeated assertions that evidence is forthcoming. paired with a false narrative that I was already aware of the nature and severity of these allegations. I speak not only in defense in my integrity, but in defense of public service and the dedicated professionals who serve this community with humility, care, and quiet competence. This council member made clear during feedback session of my evaluation in mid-September that he was angry. He was very emotional over how I handled the enterprise rate initiative. 2 weeks later, we met again. He said he would not support a merit increase, citing his general opposition to council pay raises, which he also voted no. At that point, there was no reference to any performance concerns, nor any indication, despite later claims, that he no longer supported my leadership as city and county manager. In the months that followed, we continued to work together as usual. We exchanged emails, held meetings, sat side by side in the council chambers. Not once did he raise concerns, express dissatisfaction, or provide feedback regarding my performance or conduct. Yet now, these same claims are paired with statements implying that his frustration had been clearly and consistently communicated. That is simply not true. So when this email surfaced through a Quora request and our city county attorney brought it to me, I was blindsided. And I still wonder, if it hadn't been uncovered, when would I have learned that I was being accused of negligence, intentionally sabotaging my council? When would I have been told how I was supposedly being held accountable for mismanagement? Instead of pausing or clarifying, this narrative has continually been repeated with significant personal and professional consequences. A recent Quora request have revealed to the extent that these statements have been spread, forwarded to TV and print media, used as talking points on social media, and repeating to anyone that would listen. I've even had a public relation firm reach out and contact me that they received an unusual inquiry about the censure hearing. That is not a community concern. That is a public campaign. Social media commentary has continued to come up this week with fresh speculation about tonight's meeting. The facts remained unchanged. For more than 25 years, I have had the privilege of serving this community in a variety of roles. My work has earned the respect of peers and elected officials at both local and state levels, recognition built not on titles or tenure alone, but on professionalism, expertise, and an unwavering commitment to put this community first. That reputation was not given, it was earned through years of hard work, transparency, resiliency, and measurable results. I've welcomed accountability. I've responded to criticism with composure and professionalism. I return calls within hours. I rearrange my schedule to accommodate any council member request to meet with every council member who has ever asked. On evenings, weekends, coffee, lunch, I have shown up as many of the council members that engage with me monthly, weekly, in person, and virtually. Do I get it right 100% of the time? Absolutely not. But when I make a mistake, I own it, I correct it, and most importantly, I move forward with purpose. Accusations of this nature demand evidence, not opinions, not spin, not social media posts, and not anonymous messages. Still, no evidence has been provided, and I'm assuming, based on the ongoing commentary, the long-awaited body of evidence to support these claims tonight will be relitigating the handling of the enterprise situation and notification regarding my performance. Let me be clear about what the record shows. In 2024 alone, I exchanged over 100 emails with the council member making these claims. We had 3 individual meetings. Not once did he raise concerns of negligence, sabotage, or provide feedback regarding holding me accountable. I appreciate the background music. It gives me a chance to breathe and take a moment. Not once did he raise concerns of gross negligence, sabotage, or provide feedback regarding holding me accountable. There was nothing of the sort. Our meetings covered key topics: charter changes, utility assistance program, budget decisions. They were productive, respectful, and utterly devoid of these accusations that have since been made. Between June and October, when the budget was passed, I worked closely with this council member on water rates, enterprise funds, community responses. He asked for much information and staff delivered to the very best of our ability. My assumption also is tonight that this council member will be relitigating a decision that 9 out of 11 of these council members voted yes 6 months ago, rather than focusing on the work that has occurred since. And that vote will be discussing at the upcoming quarterly enterprise fund, which is next week on 4/15. Which represents the culmination of the last 3 years of effort and work that included over 200 staff members. Or perhaps the evidence tonight will include relitigating a performance review that had concluded 2 months ago and included the original and initial agreement to move me to the 70th percentile of the 2025 range or the 70th percentile of the 2024 range, whichever was higher. In December, I was notified that that move would be a 10% increase. I immediately emailed the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and asked them to pull my contract from the next follow-up agenda, as there was no conceivable way, given the increase in property taxes, the untenable amount of that water increase, along with food prices and every other item that our community has had to endure. Once the contract was removed, I suggested an additional executive session, which was scheduled. I was not in attendance. During which the council member claims additional comments were made regarding ending my tenure. In the December meeting, I was notified that the majority of council recommended a 4% increase, which I subsequently declined for reasons noted during the January 25th council meeting, which didn't include, by the way, as has been reported to members of this community, I declined because somehow I knew it wasn't unanimous, which I did not, and makes no sense, as a majority of council would have passed the recommended 4% increase. To relitigate either of those claims undermines the governance structure that I, the staff, and council have already moved forward. It appears that the frustration may be that the majority of council disagreed with his opinion and determined that they had had enough information to vote yes on the water rate increases and to recommend a salary increase. This isn't personal. This behavior undermines public trust in government. It demoralizes staff. I'm not even going to look in the audience to see how many are here tonight. I just want you to know that I'm overwhelmed and I'm grateful. And it was very unexpected. It discourages talented people from serving in CCOB, and it breaks down the very institutions that hold this community together. To our staff, you are the backbone of this organization and you serve with honor. I see you. I will always support, defend, and own your work. The buck will always stop with me. In particular, specific to the main issue that will again be thrown around tonight, Public Works, Finance, Planning, Engineering, the economists, and the CMO crew totaling over 200 staff members that have spent countless hours building a sustainable, transparent, fiscally stable enterprise fund structure over the last 3 years. It's been my honor to work, grow, and learn beside every single one of you. To council, I will continue to serve this body with respect and professionalism. And to our community, I will not let falsehoods rewrite my record, and I will not be intimidated. I have served Broomfield with integrity for 25 years, and I will continue to do just that for the remainder of my time here. This situation is my line in the sand, because leadership isn't about weathering the storm. It's about facing it head on with facts and courage and clarity. On behalf of myself, my team, and the community, thank you for those council members that called this meeting.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Councilmember Marshallson, do you have a statement?
I do. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Let's be clear about what we're talking tonight. This was not a discussion that was ever intended to be made in public. Personnel issues are supposed to happen behind closed doors. This was an email that was sent that was inadvertently released through the core request and made public through the censure process. I have reached out to Manager Hoffman on several occasions in this time to set up a meeting to discuss these. Those meetings have not been set. We have, Councilmember Hinkle, Councilmember Cohen, Councilmember Leslie, Senate, they made up the internal council oversight committee that we had to oversee our staff that we directly hired. They sent an email to council last week asking if this meeting be postponed because they felt that it was better to be done in a broader overarching issue. We have structural issues with how we manage our staff, council does. It's been an ongoing process. We've changed it several times since in my tenure on council. One of the issues that we have is that we have no mechanism currently in place for council as a body to handle issues that come up in real time. They are dealt with annually, only at one time. And that is one of the issues that has come up with this. I want to start off by saying that, to echo actually what Manager Hoffman said, in that our staff is amazing. I think that all of you do an amazing job. I have no problem with any of the performance of any staff member. That's not my job anyway. But I have worked with every one of you for several years, and for years before that when I was on boards and commissions, and you do an amazing job. My issue with the leadership in Broomfield right now is nothing to do with you. I want to make that clear. The issue at hand is the email I sent. It made two specific claims, and let's kind of get into that. This is not about the reasoning of why it was sent. To argue about why it was sent is a distraction from the actual issues of the claims. There are two specific claims. One, I use the word sabotage. To clarify that statement, to make it more understandable what I meant, it is my claim that Manager Hoffman intentionally has acted in a way that undermines counsel to the community. I have, and I will lay out the information provided that I have tonight regarding that claim. The second claim is related to the water rates. I made the claim of negligence and mismanagement. I stand by that statement. So as Manager Hoffman does not seem to want to relitigate it, I understand that, but that is essential to what I have said. In 2022, council was given a rate study done by a third-party consultant. That rate study suggested that it laid out the expenditures that we were going to need in the future, and it laid out that we needed a 16% increase in revenues over the course of 6 years, of 2023 to 2028. That rate study asked for 16% increases. Council approved that rate study. That rate study came with 152 pages of information, of data from the consultant. That data was used to support the rate study that we had to do. It was projections, it was information, 152 pages. So council voted to approve that. I voted to approve that. In 2023, just a year later, we got a new proposal from staff. Instead of the 16% over 6 years, the proposal was an 18% in 2024 and a total of 60 something, I have it written down, 60 something percent over the course of that same 6-year period. caught a lot of us council by off guard. We had internal discussions about it. Ultimately, we voted to approve it. I voted in favor of that at that time because I trusted the information that was being provided to me. The next year, you all know what happened last fall. We were given another consultant information, another rate study that instead of 18% and 60% over the course, instead of 16% over 6 years and then 60% over 6 years, it was 50% in 1 year and 96% over the same 6-year period. That took all of us on council by surprise. The mayor's not here tonight, but she and I had a conversation about how upset we were that council felt blindsided by that dramatic rate increase. We were given the consultant top line information. We were given the PowerPoints. This is what they recommend. Took me by surprise, so I asked more questions. One of the issues that we were told was, and I will use the word excuse that we were told, was we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know how bad it was. We didn't know previously what we didn't know. Manager Hoffman in her executive session last fall, when I did bring this up, when I did in fact advocate for her to be terminated at that time and for a change in the position. In that meeting, in those meetings, she said she should not be held responsible for anything that happened before her tenure, but she takes responsibility for the things that happen after. I agree with that to a point, and I'll explain that. In 2019, Manager Hoffman became City County Manager. City County Manager Hoffman was part of the CMO's office for years before that. I don't know her exact date since she started in the CMO office, but I know she was number 3 in the office for several years. One of the reasons we were told of why we didn't know was we didn't have a capital asset management system. We had no way of tracking our capital asset systems, our actual infrastructure. And that's why we didn't know how bad it was. The problem with that statement, and this is something I did raise in the executive sessions last year, the problem with that statement is that if you look at any of our internal audits, we get a semi-annual internal audit. If you look at any of our internal audits, the lack of an asset management system was identified as a key issue in 2013, long before Manager Hoffman ever took office. Which means in 2019, when she became City County Manager, she knew or should have known it was a problem. And I'm not willing to give grace. She and I have had many conversations. She's right, we've had conversations about different things. It takes time to make changes. 2019, COVID happened in 2020, fine. But in 2022, we hired an outside consultant to do our rate study. The fact that our asset management system was not up to stuff and that we didn't know how bad it was, should have been part of that 2022 rate study. It should have been known, it should have been given to the consultant at the time. It is my position, and this is the basis for my statement, is my position that Manager Hoffman in 2022, when we did that rate study, knew or should have known the lack of the system was a problem. It should have been taken into account. To me, that is negligence. That is mismanagement. There is no way around it, in my opinion, or not just my opinion, my position. That is negligent mismanagement. It was known or should have known. Not only that, that has directly impacted residents, the residents' pocketbooks. We asked residents this year, I ultimately voted against the water rate increase. We asked residents to absorb a 50% rate increase average, but actually in the wintertime months, it was a 100% rate increase. That's $40 a month. There was a time not that long ago that I personally, when my older kids were young, I sold blood to pay the bills, to put food on my table. $40 at the time, and this is a point that I made during the water rates. $40 a month is a big deal. In my opinion, the negligent mismanagement of the rates increases over that 3-year period directly harmed our residents. So that is my basis for the negligent comment. that specific thing, that it was known or should have been known and should have been taken into consideration at the time. There are other issues of mismanagement that I will raise. I will go into a few of them. The water communication is a key one. The water tanks, the northern water tanks, that whole situation was mismanaged. The community came to us and said, we were always told that it was one tank buried, and Manager Hoffman's, I remember the meeting. I didn't look up the exact quote, but I remember the meeting like, no, we were going to do 3 tanks. And that's not true. There was an email from the residents, from our staff, saying it's one buried tank. The water tanks were mismanaged. The water tank, I pulled the numbers. The first memo we received on the water tanks in January of 2023 placed the cost at $47 million. The final numbers that when we passed the SDP only a year and a half later was $93 million. Now I understand that during design, during finalization, costs firm and change. But a doubling the cost to me is mismanagement. There's no way that initial estimate should have been so low compared to what the final number was. We have had other issues. Manager Hoffman claims that she always takes responsibility for shortcomings. That is just not true. We are finishing up our reconstruction of the Bay project, Bay remodeling project. There was serious communication issues with that project for the neighborhood. We had to put the construction route of the construction trucks through the Highland Park neighborhood. That information was not given to council until after the neighbors found out through a neighborhood meeting notification. Council was not notified of that until the neighbors found out about that. And then the neighborhood was only told that, well, there's a meeting to talk about it, but it was after council was already going to approve the construction. I had a conversation with Manager Hoffman on the phone about that. She apologized to me about the miscommunication with the neighborhood. But when I asked the question in a public meeting, like, why did this happen? The answer she gave was doublespeak. It didn't take responsibility to the neighborhood. It didn't acknowledge the failure. It just made excuses. And it was done in a way that sounds pretty and looks good, but it was not taking responsibility for the communication issue. Other things, issues, the ERP system. We are currently doing it's our financial management system that we don't have. For years, we've been told that we can't do things, that it's too expensive to do things because we don't have an updated system. That's great that we're doing it, but I'm curious to know how many millions of dollars that we have spent in extra personnel costs because this wasn't a priority earlier, because we are just now doing it now. Every time council presents an issue, it's too expensive, it's too much money because it's a manual system. And to me, that is another issue that's mismanagement. It should have been done many years ago. And then there is the issue of going back to the water rates. And this goes broader, goes to my second point of what I stand by is intentionally undermining council. When the water rate were given to council, many of us on council, we had internal discussions. Many of us were surprised and shocked, and we were looking for ways to do something different, to not put that dramatic of a cost on the residents. When I said that our 2022 rate study was 152 pages of information, the rate study that we were given for the 2024 rates was not that kind of data. It was PowerPoints. I sent 4 different emails asking for the underlying data, for the projections, for the 5-6 year projections of expenses that form the basis for those rate increase recommendations. I never received those. The first response was the consultant's top line PowerPoint presentations. The second response was the information from the consultant doing the infrastructure, the fixed assets. A list of all the fixed assets, but it wasn't the actual projected data. The third response was a little bit better, but not really much. And many of my council colleagues, I had conversations, private conversations with, and had conversation with the mayor. The mayor knows how close I came to filing a core request on our own city manager because I was not getting information that I had requested. And let's be clear, this wasn't confidential information. This wasn't work product. This wasn't attorney-client. This is public data. There's absolutely no reason why public data should not be given to the community and to council, but I never received it. Former Mayor Pat Quinn finally submitted a core request and got the 2025 data, but nothing beyond that. And let's be clear, this wasn't just me by myself. I had meetings and conversations with several former council members, former mayors, members of the community, all who asked me to look more in depth into this, that this didn't make sense. This data didn't add up. Please, and they also were upset, but because the way that this was originally proposed and presented to the public was, it was all the fault of the old councils. It was the fault of the old managers. If you remember, the son of a former city manager wrote a editorial in the paper denouncing the way it was handled because it brought their legacies and their work product into claim. I asked for this data several different times. I never received it. The reason I wanted the data is because after we got the 2023 rate study, or the rate increase request, I trusted the information I got. When I got to the 2024 data, I no longer trusted the information I got that we received. It was lacking, it wasn't there, it wasn't complete. I didn't trust what I was being told. So I asked for the data so that I could independently, because that's my job. My job is not to rubber stamp what staff puts in front of us. None of our council members. We are elected by the people to represent the people. It is our job to independently verify and dig into the information provided, not rubber stamp. I asked for the information so I could do that. My intention was to find a way to do better, figure out a way that we cannot do this. I never received the information, which is why I eventually voted against the rate increases. During that time frame, and this goes to the other part of it, during that time frame, many of my colleagues, we all brought forward ideas of, hey, let's do this instead of this. Let's do this instead of that. Let's find different ways to still fund things, but maybe not have such a dramatic rate increase all at once. Every one of those suggestions was met with a no. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. And there was an explanation. There was explanations in why, but it was no. It was never, well, let's talk about it. Let's find a way. Let's look at it. It was always no. And that leads to the intentional undermining of council. I understand that in our form of government, tension and disagreements between management and council is always going to happen. I have friends on other city councils. It's not unique to Broomfield. But what is unique, in my opinion, is the way in which items and issues are portrayed to the public in a way that makes council look like the problem. The email that I wrote was in response to directly after our council focus session for 2025. Manager Hoffman asked why I didn't bring some of this forward. Well, the email was written almost immediately after that. It was a frustration email because it had come to light what I believed was happening. There wasn't time to reach out. It would have happened. I had already talked to some colleagues, and I was going to call a executive session to discuss this further. I talked to the mayor about the issues that I had. And then I wrote the email and this all happened. So there wasn't time to really do anything else. This has forced our hand. So that's where we're at now. In 2024, we had our study session. We had our focus session. Council discussed a bunch of priorities, a bunch of issues. At that meeting, Manager Hoffman made statements to the effect that we don't have time or staff resources or money to do any of these things. Outside groups in Broomfield took that statement and said, well, council has pet projects and council's overworking and council's the problem. We saw that. All of us saw that. We were frustrated by that. I know I had a conversation with the mayor, and I know other council members did too, of the frustration. The mayor had a conversation with Manager Hoffman at that time about how her words were being portrayed in the public. Yet at this year's meeting, the exact same thing happened. There was a slide. These are staff priorities. Then there's a slide. These are council priorities. We have money for these. We don't have money for these. The insinuation, in my opinion on this one, is that staff priorities are the priority. Council priorities are not. Council priorities are extra. During that meeting, I texted several members of council individually, as well as the mayor. And I almost raised my hand at that time to make a comment, because the point I wanted to make is council is the elected representatives of the people. We are responsible to the people. The manager is responsible to us. Community priorities are council priorities. Council priorities are community priorities. Staff priorities, Manager Hoffman's priorities, are whatever council tells her they are. There is not either or. It is one thing, and council sets the priorities. And I know that sounds political, but that's the way we are. That's our form of government. You all elect us. We set the priorities. The reason I use intentional in that context is because Manager Hoffman is a smart person. Very well educated, very experienced. There is no part in my mind that does not believe that she did not know how her words would be portrayed and interpreted. That it was done in a way to put council in our place, to push back and tell us not to push it too far forward. If this was the only time this had happened, I might have been upset, but we see this in other factors. Every time council brings forward a idea on something, it's met with, we don't have the money for that, we don't have the resources for that, nothing. But just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, we had a study session on a zoning change, changing our zoning. The memo from Manager Hoffman said there's no financial impact because this is a staff priority, a staff-led initiative or whatever the language was. The implication is that staff-led, Manager Hoffman-led issues don't cost money, but council priorities do. On more than one occasion, and my council colleagues can vouch for this, on more than one occasion, we have brought things forward. I brought forward an idea I brought an amendment last year's budget session for a park shelter in a park in my neighborhood, in my ward. I sent an email to Manager Hoffman and staff about what this would cost. The response I received was it was going to be $25,000 for small shelter, $100,000 for a large shelter. When it came to time to offer the amendment, it was $300,000 because we have to do X, Y, and Z also. That's not the first time that type of thing has happened. We bring forward ideas, we get a cost, we move forward with it, and all of a sudden the cost escalates and increases. I'm not putting a intent on that, but I am frustrated by that. And my council colleagues also, I know some of my other council colleagues are frustrated by that too, that when we push forward with something, all of a sudden the cost goes up. That formed the basis of my email. I believe it is my position that Manager Hoffman conducts herself in a way that is unprofessional, intentionally undermines council, and handle the water rates in a negligent mismanagement way. There's been some conversations about how open and accessible she is. And from a calendar perspective, that is absolutely correct. From a calendar perspective, Manager Hoffman is always available to meet. From a perspective of openness to hear criticism and to understand and to take responsibility, that's a completely different story. My experience with Manager Hoffman has been, yes, she's always available for calendar meeting. She is not open to criticism. My colleagues know this. In the 3 years I've been on council, Manager Hoffman has threatened to quit 3 different times because she's been unhappy with how council has spoken to her or how council has pushed back to her. We admonished her, council admonished her a couple of years ago because she would have one-on-one meetings with me And she would, in my meeting with me, she would talk disparagingly about Councilmember Ward or Councilmember Anderson or other council members. And in meetings with those council members, she would talk disparagingly about me or other council members. We had this conversation in executive session about her performance previously. We admonished her for that. Just a couple weeks ago, she sent an email to a text message to Councilmember Hinkle inadvertently, in which the text message spoke disparagingly. It was meant for somebody else, but it spoke disparagingly about Councilmember Hinkle. That is unprofessional. That is absolutely unprofessional. Council is elected to represent the people of Broomfield. We swear an oath to represent the people of Broomfield, to act in their best interest. We hire a manager to manage the day-to-day operations, also in the manner which is in the best interest of the people. Council has to be aligned with our staff or it doesn't work. My position is that we are not. That is why during the executive session last year, in September, I advocated for her to be terminated and for us to hire somebody else. And the interesting thing is, despite whatever conversations we have up here publicly, we have individual internal conversations too. There is more than one council member that I had personal conversation with that did not want to move forward with firing Manager Hoffman at that time, not because they supported her performance, not because she thought she did a good job, but because at that time we had just lost our 2 deputy managers. And it would have been too much of a chaos to replace a manager and too expensive to go through the process. Privately, Manager Hoffman does not have the support of all council members, unless they're lying to me, which is, I can't say, I can't speculate on that. But the internal conversations I have had tell me that those that agree with me on Manager Hoffman's performance, I don't know if it's the majority, but it is close. And the reason this hasn't come to the public before is because of the chaos and way it looks, the politics of it. I am sorry this came to the community like this. I am sorry that this happened this way. It was not my intention to do this publicly, but it is my contention that Manager Hoffman is not the right fit for this community. She has acted unprofessionally. She has acted in a way that is not in the best interest of this community. And that is all I have at this time. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Councilmember Marshallson. Do any of my council colleagues have a statement they would like to make before we go to public comments? We will have time for discussion and public comments. We will have time for discussion after public comment. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Before this meeting, I had made attempts to draft a statement, but that was also before Councilmember Marshallson decided he would actually come to the meeting. And having heard what Councilmember Marshallson has had to say and what Manager Hoffman has had to say, I'm just going to kind of wing it. So bear with me for a second. Manager Hoffman says that the buck stops with her. I'm going to disagree with you for just a little bit on that, because as the elected representatives for the city and county of Broomfield and the body that employs you, really the buck stops with us. Councilmember Marshallson has made comments that he doesn't appreciate how Manager Hoffman presents hard information. He doesn't like that we are told that if we're going to have to do this, it's going to cost money. We're going to have to reallocate resources. But that is our job, is to make the hard decisions. Our job is to control the budget. We have sole control of the budget. We can bring amendments. I have talked about bringing an amendment before in the past and working on getting council support, with the key phrase being council support. We act as a body. And if you want something passed, you have to convince at least 5 other council members to vote your way. At no time have any of us been able to convince 5 other council members to go the way we want with a budget amendment if those discussions ever happened. There were some other things that Councilmember Marsh-Holshan referenced about Manager Hoffman's actions, statements, et cetera. I'll leave that for questions. But one thing I do want to state is there have been actions that we have taken as a body, and I have disagreed with them. The northern water tanks being one. Councilmember Marsh-Holshan states that the price discrepancy between when it was first introduced and when we finally voted on it was way too much. He neglects to reinforce the public that a year transpired between when the northern water tanks first were proposed to council and when we actually voted on them, because this council decided it wanted to have another study done to determine what the cost was for a full buried tank and partially buried tanks, of which Councilmember Marsh-Holshan voted for that study and delayed the project by a year. Those are not the actions of the city and county manager. That is the actions of city council. And again, he references that the residents were originally told it was going to be 1 tank, and then it had to be changed to 3 tanks. There was no written contract signed with residents that said we are only going to put this in. It was a plan. And plans change because circumstances change. Developments change, timelines change, and needs of the community change, which necessitated us, with staff really being the ones doing the work, to relook at those plans and make a different recommendation than what was proposed in the mid-2010s for that neighborhood. I believe that the evidence that Councilmember Marsh-Holshan has presented tonight are really up for you, the public, to make a determination as to whether or not they rise to the level of negligence, sabotage, and mismanagement of city and county funds. I personally do not think that that has occurred. There are times Manager Hoffman has made mistakes. We have all made mistakes. That's part of being human. Our goal as elected officials up on this dais, and even those that we appoint over on that dais, are to minimize those mistakes as much as we possibly can, because we are held to a higher standard. But we are going to fail. And I do believe Manager Hoffman has owned those failures. I have had many conversations with Manager Hoffman over the almost 3.5 years I've been on this council. I have monthly one-on-ones with her, and they are lengthy, 1.5 hours, 2 hours long. Any issue I have ever had, and yes, I have been frustrated that there are things that I'd like to get done that take longer than I would like them to take. But at the end of the day, I have expressed those frustrations with Manager Hoffman. We have talked through them. And while I still don't like they take longer, I understand why they take longer. And at the end of the day, council has the authority to reprioritize projects and reallocate the budget to make them happen quicker if they want to. I know I don't have those votes. So I live with that, and I just keep pushing on. With that, Mayor Pro Tem, I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Councilmember Delgadillo.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'll be very brief here. I'll just say that I do not believe that any negligence or mismanagement has occurred here. I have full faith and confidence in Jennifer Hoffman and CCOB staff. And while I did vote for this meeting, honestly, it is just saddening that we are all here tearing each other apart. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I support staff. I support the work of the current city council, and this conflict that stems between two individuals who I'm in between. So I'm directly feel like this is tough because I personally believe that these two individuals are dedicated public servants who care about our community in Broomfield. I voted against the censure of Councilmember Marshall Olson. I was one of the 4 votes against it because I believe that the email in question that was brought to light through the core request, which is the Caldwell Open Records Act, it was not supposed to be seen in public. And while I disagree with its content, and I do believe in the work that City Manager Hoffman has done, I also do believe that censoring a city council member for their opinion on a matter was not appropriate. City council member Marshall Olson is entitled to his free expression of freedom. And I feel like this situation has escalated to the point where it is, in a lot of ways, a failure of communication. I disapprove the reasoning and the calling for the special session as well, as it feels rushed and does not accurately represent the interests of the Broomfield City Council. And I just have to say that this is tough. This is a tough situation. In my opinion, this is a situation where we should not be creating a public space for this between two individuals. I believe that there are better ways to addressing the concerns and issues of the city and county of Broomfield. And quite frankly, I'm disappointed in the situation. It feels rushed. It feels like it was not, it's escalated to the point where we are in I hate to say it, a breaking point, so to speak, between the work environment of two individuals. And this is not supposed to be a place for a trial, for us to badger each other. And I feel like the mudsling is not appropriate. And I think that this is not a good opportunity for this. And again, I appreciate everyone being here, and I hope we can find a way forward to this. And hopefully there are ways for we can reconcile and continue working to serving the people of Broomfield. Thank you, Mayor, or Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I did prepare something, so I will just read this. It's really hard to focus when it's this intense, and I really I wish I had more representation on this side of the dais. It feels lonely down here tonight. Okay, our focus must remain on the pressing issues facing Broomfield today. We were elected to lead, to confront challenges and make decisions that serve the community, not to let frustration or divisiveness distract us from our purpose. However, at this point in time, the only way we can move forward is to address the serious accusations that have been made against our city manager. And I do not agree with these accusations. One of the most significant decisions council makes is related to the hiring and performance of the city and county manager, as we coordinate nearly every aspect of council business through her office and her staff. Typically, such conversations belong in an executive session and as part of a full council body. The decision to air these matters publicly today stems from emails that lack the professionalism and discretion required of this body, and most concerning of all, contained unsubstantiated claims that have profound impacts to our city manager and resonate through all of us. If we had been solely focused on water infrastructure over the past few years, there would have been merit to the claims, and that we should have been more proactive and prepared for the changing landscape of regulations, growth, aging infrastructure, and more that have impacted our enterprise funds. However, this is not the case. Council does represent the community, and we should represent the priorities of our community, but the overarching priority for the city and county is fiduciary responsibility and running all the aspects of a city and county. Every email we send is subject to public transparency under CORA. We must approach our communications with care and respect for our colleagues, staff, and the trust placed in us by Broomfield residents. Treating one another with respect, even during disagreements, is paramount to healthy governance. The situation has spiraled out of control, and it underscores a critical need for strong leadership. We are here for one reason: to serve Broomfield. We are dealing with real problems, including the rising cost of living, while needing to focus on road improvements, water infrastructure, developments like Baseline, the Eagle Trace Golf Course, and so much more. These challenges demand our focus and collaboration. Respect for the will of the council is essential. We may not always agree, and we've all been in the minority at some point, but once decisions are made, it's our duty to support the work of the body rather than undermine it. And here, I just have to say, we enter into executive session, we have discussions, we have, there are things that we keep to ourselves, and we start to talk about executive sessions in public that's also undermining the body. And I will tell you, I shared straight up with Manager Hoffman that a couple of years ago, I was frustrated. I shared that, but I also overcame that because I went to her office. We talked through the issues that we were facing and we worked right through them. And so we don't want to look at something that a point in time where I was frustrated to a point in time where I am so appreciative to call our Manager Hoffman, our city manager. So if we can just work through those frustrations, it would be better than trying to undermine this body. And I'm getting really frustrated because I feel like that is what is happening here. And anyways, I just want to share that I'm worried about where we're headed. I'm very concerned because this is not how a council conducts business. And I sure hope that those up here on the dais and those who are not present tonight, that we come together and we find a better way forward, because this is not the right way. Anyways, our decisions have made an impact far beyond our immediate discussions. They shape Broomfield's future and the trust of those who elected us. Let us move forward together, repairing divisions, working together through these differences, and recommitting ourselves to the shared goal of serving our community. Broomfield seriously deserves better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lim.
On March 25th, I voted for the censure of Councilmember Marsh Holshan for making unsubstantiated claims of gross negligence regarding an employee of council. However, my Ward 3 constituents are still asking, why weren't water rate increases graduated? I do not have a complete answer for them. The 524 AECOM study did not provide the financial data used to back up staff's water rate increase recommendations. Council was not given adequate information by staff to enable us to make prudent decisions that would have resulted in more gradual water rate increases. And I stated that fact in my closing remarks before the 10-1-24 vote. Going back only a few months before the huge water rate increase recommendations in June 24, staff recommended only a small increase in the rates. The September 23 memo from staff stated, quote, "These revenue adjustments will help ensure the financial stability of the utilities through the collection of revenue sufficient to recover operating costs, financial capital improvement projects, and maintain the fund balance at policy level now and into the future," unquote. There was nothing mentioned in September of 23 to council about any increase of huge proportions on the horizon when we voted on the small increases in September of 23. I do not have any evidence, nor do I have a clear explanation to say why there were not better forecasts available to us sooner. At a focus session in February, I asked staff if they will share with council and the public the financial data and assumptions that they will use in updating the long-range financial plan by early 2026. The city manager answered they will do their best, but they are hampered by an archaic financial system until they have the enterprise resource planning system in place in 2027. In my opinion, council cannot wait 2 years to have the complete data to make important decisions. I expect better data, better communication, and increased transparency from the city manager to council. Going forward, I also support the establishment of a broader council process for evaluation and communication with the city manager. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was everybody. So I'll deliver my statement. So Mayor, normally the mayor would be here, but I'll, in fact that she's not here, I'll still mention her. Fellow council members, staff, and yes, tonight, public. Last night, I once again was, witnessed the beauty of the Broomfield community. The Broomfield Boards and Commissions Appreciation Dinner occurred last night, and the theme was a world of thanks. I'm so appreciative of the way in which our volunteers work alongside our staff to share their time, their talents, and their dedication to the Broomfield community. Through these community members, the staff, and the leaders, I have come to see how wonderful the community of Broomfield really is and how hard we work to ensure that this community exemplifies the mission to serve the community in an efficient, respectful, and courteous manner. These roles and issues can be challenging at times, but the rewards are so plentiful, especially when approached with compassion, humility, and integrity. We do this work through treating our residents and employees with dignity, respect, and equity. I remember when Broomfield City Council hired Jennifer Hoffman and started down the path where we are today. We have gone through a pandemic together and came out on the other side. It has taken a long time to stabilize staff throughout all of these changes. But just like our current budget, our staff too is stable, but fragile. Council as a body have indicated to our city and county manager and to our organization the safety, the confidence, and reassurance we have in them. But the current behavior of a council member has put that into question. Has put that into question, which is the voice of the majority. The majority believes that we have the confidence and the reassurance in our city council, in our city and county manager, and in our staff. Although this meeting tonight is not about the performance of the city and county manager Hoffman, as we held a multi-month evaluation process that culminated in the majority of council being in agreement to offer a 4% increase to this manager's salary. Let me just repeat that. The majority of council have confidence and respect for our incredible city and county manager. That's the majority. That same confidence and respect extends to the rest of the Broomfield staff. We are so thankful for your selfless, got that one right tonight, and care you demonstrate to all of Broomfield. This meeting is also not about rehashing the decision on the enterprise funds. As a majority, again, a majority of council members supported the decision to increase water rates to ensure stability of our water infrastructure. That was a conversation for more than 3 years. What is evident tonight is there is a council member who was censured by his council for his statements, including negligence, sabotage, and mismanagement he made about our city and county manager. These accusations are meritless, and after we heard tonight, they still lack accountability and credibility. To govern effectively, even in the minority, and I know this so many times, even in the minority, we as council members must present a more professional body that is serving the best community in the state and serving along the greatest professional staff. The actions of one council member does not reflect the voice of the body of council, and I hope you hear this tonight. At the same time, I do know the attacks on reputations and character by even just one council member can seem unbearable. For that, as a leader of this council, it breaks my heart to see the damage done in the organization and in the community. We have to do better. We must do better. I'm sorry for the hurt that has occurred. I want to repair the damage that has occurred, and I will do everything in my power to ensure it doesn't continue. I'm optimistic and focused on the future of our community. To get there, we need a commitment from each and every council member to look forward, to grow our knowledge, and to act professionally. I am confident this will happen because we have the privilege and honor of calling ourselves elected city council members from the city and county of Broomfield. Thank you. At this time, we will now proceed with public comments. If there is anyone who would like to be heard, please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Oh, is the podium right there? Yep.
Hi, my name is Kathy Ayala. I live in Westlake South, and neither of my council members are here tonight. First of all, I'd like to say that I have known Jennifer for years. I've been in Broomfield since 1993. I've known her most of that time, I think, and I have never been given an opportunity to question anything she has done. Her integrity, her principles, her values, her honesty, and her willingness to answer questions has been phenomenal. I have not had an experience of a better city employee, as all of the staff in Broomfield never complained about no complaints. I'm very saddened that we are here. I'm very saddened that this has come to pass. This public hearing is not some, I don't normally come to these in public. I usually listen to y'all at home, but I felt this was important enough to be here tonight. I hope and pray that City Council, the two parties, can get through this with grace and humility. And please put this behind you. This is the worst time for anything politically to be put into the atmosphere that can be used against this very courageous and strong body. I hate to see it undermined because of toxic rhetoric that's being spun out of control by parties that none of us can control. So, thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Coleman. I'm from Lockamore neighborhood, just north of there, actually in Sunridge. We've raised our family here in Broomfield. My son actually is an employee of the city and county of Broomfield. And I couldn't be prouder of my community. They went to Broomfield High School. We've been members of the Risen Savior Lutheran Church. We've been involved in Kiwanis, went out there and helped with the Marshall fires, and done so many things to help our community. Jennifer Hoffman is a community builder. I've had a chance to know her and talk to her a couple of times, and she very graciously and jealously guards the funds of the city and county of Broomfield. She does not want to see them misspent. I've gone to one of the study sessions that the city councils had, and some of the proposals they were making for some of the money that they were trying to spend on full-time county commissioner jobs or all kinds of other things that they wanted to do at the expense of the Broomfield taxpayer. I look at a city council as something, it's an opportunity to be a public servant. It's not an opportunity to dictate to people what they should and should not be doing. And although I am not a member of Ward 1, I would like to recommend to Councilman Marsh Holshin that not only should your censure stand, but I think you should resign from office.
My name is Tina Thomas, and I am a member of Ward, a resident of Ward 4. But when I look at City Council, all of you are my council members, not just my Ward 4 people. All of you are my council members. And up to tonight, I've been very proud of this council because you all have worked together. And I really don't understand why that has stopped. And again, yes, you are elected, and I'm asking you, please step back from all the crap and put together, each of you represent all of Broomfield County, not just each of your wards. And as for Jennifer's integrity, when she says, yes, she does have integrity, she will also admit that if something's wrong, she is going to work to fix it. I brought an issue to her several years ago, and she said, oops, and it got fixed. And it has stayed wonderfully fixed, and I will be forever grateful, as I think the county will be forever grateful for your support and acknowledgement and concern. She didn't need to do it, but she did. So please, council, become all of our councils, not just our wards.
Good evening. My name is Heather Stidham from Ward 5. Thank you for those of you who showed up here tonight, including everybody here. I think that there's blame to go around. Nobody here is innocent, and I really appreciate, those of you taking accountability. And when I say that there's blame to go around, that includes us as citizens who don't show up here weekly to pay attention to what's happening. This is kind of, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Like, how much time has been wasted with city council and the priorities that you've stated over the last couple of years? Probably about half of your time over the last few years hasn't even been on your own stated priorities. Instead, you waste your time on non-priority items like single hauler trash, welcoming city, minimum wage, Second Amendment. You had ample opportunity to address cost of living crisis that we're having, but instead focused on single hauler trash. I sat through an hour-long presentation the other night, somebody proposing another sales tax increase here in Broomfield. You had the opportunity to reduce our mill levy and help us out. Your 2024 focus session, all of those were pet projects, every single agenda item there. I've lived here since 1973, right after I was born. This is my community. I've raised my family here. And I just want to, again, there's blame for all of us. Stop pointing fingers, be leaders. We have real issues to address in Broomfield, not just the water rates and the water infrastructure, the downtown Broomfield, cost of living, First Bank Center, and now Eagle Trace. Broomfield needs real leaders. Figure it out, do better, all of us. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, staff. I'm Sarah Taylor. I live in First Filing. I've lived in Broomfield since the 80s because apparently we're stating our credentials. I'm very happy about single hauler trash. That has been a priority for some people for years and years, but that's not why I'm here. Council is a policy making body. Staff takes care of the city. You set policies and staff carries them out. It is not your job to investigate the city manager. If you're not getting the information you need, then you keep asking for it until you get it. If you can't work together as a body, then you figure out as a body how you can work together without acting like children. People who work for the state and are attorneys and work for other organizations such as universities know perfectly well what public information is available. You don't send an email, you don't write a letter, you don't send a text if you're not willing to see it on television. So don't pretend it was an accident. You're an attorney. I think you guys all need to remember you're a policymaking body. You do not have full-time jobs. You put the staff to work. And don't act like children. Thank you.
Penny David, Ward 5, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, City Staff, thank you for being here tonight. I've lived here for 35 years. I raised my son here, and this has all been very embarrassing. This should not be what Broomfield is about. We should be working together. We should be volunteering together. We should be having conversations, not sending disparaging emails about each other. We can do better. I had something prepared, but I threw that out of the window when I listened to all of you. So let me see if I can get through this really fast. Councilmember Ward, thank you. On the 25th, what you said was bold and brave. And I appreciate what you said that evening and how you voted that evening. And I want to give you praise for that. I understood somebody read me an email that came out of some other Cora request. That you basically reined in and kept the tonight focused on this issue. Again, thank you. And thank you for your comments tonight. I agree with everything you said. Council member, I'm gonna say your name wrong, Delgado. Thank you, I 100% agree. Council member Wen, that was what the email that Council member Marshallson, that's not a freedom of speech conversation. Reread the First Amendment. It says that Congress shall not pass and list off all the things that Congress cannot put on its citizenry to not say. As a council member, using council email, sending an email to another council member, that's not freedom of speech. And it's also not private, Councilmember Marshallson. As clearly, we wouldn't be here if it was meant to be private. So I hope, if nothing else, you learned a lesson there. I will tell you, Councilmember Marshallson, I have worked in team building for 20 years. 20 years. I've worked as a project manager, Scrum Master. I'll explain it all to you later. I deal with IT people. My job is to build teams. Those kind of emails destroy teams. When I am on my company's website or email system, I'm fully aware that every email I send can be pulled by my manager at any time and reviewed. And if somebody who reported to me or somebody reported to my manager disparaged an employee, a coworker, a manager in that manner, I would make sure that their manager had words for them that that's not appropriate. We don't do that here. This is a warning. Don't do it again. So you're not my ward rep. You've been warned. It's not appropriate. Please don't do that again, because that started all of this. I feel that what you didn't take accountability for was what you did beyond that. The social media, the press, the comments at the 325, I was so angry I could not sleep for 2 hours after I went home.
Ms. David, if you'll wrap up
That
your
was
comments.
that was inappropriate. Councilmember Anderson, I agree with you. Councilmember Lim, if you get an update to an archaic system in 2 years, count yourself lucky, because it's taken some of us 10, 20 years to get some of those archaic systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
City Council, staff, Mayor Pro Tem, Bill Crothers, Northmore. I just have a couple of comments. One of the things that happened when I very first read this on Nextdoor about what happened, I immediately sent an email to the city manager and said, can you explain what this means? What's going on? And she said, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to talk about that with you. She said, I appreciate your concern, but I can't discuss that with you. And then for the next 2 or 3 days, it just kept getting worse and worse on Nextdoor. And it's like, I know it wasn't her, because she shut me down immediately. She said, I can't discuss this with you. So for anybody in here to say that she's gone online or whatever to put out remarks about James is wrong, because she just doesn't. That's not how she works. Okay, so that's one thing. I was in business for over 40 years, management, everything. If there was ever a problem with anybody, it was discussed at the time that it happened. You do not wait a year, 2 years, and then dump all of this crap. I'm sorry, all of this crap on somebody. I don't care if it's a city manager. I don't care if it's her talking about Lori Anderson. You don't do that 2 years later, after you all met and gave her a very favorable review. How can you possibly sit there now and say, oh, gee, maybe we were wrong? Okay, you weren't wrong. You made the right decision at the time. When we started this whole enterprise thing, I was as floored as anybody else in here about what was happening. And the responsibility laid with all of you, not city council, not Jennifer, not anybody. It was a group effort that you guys screwed this royally, okay? But you all stepped up and said, okay, here's what it is. We got to fix it. Let's do what we got to do, okay? The rest of you aren't coming back now and going, well, gee, if I'd have had more information, I'd have made a better decision, okay? You all had the same information. You made your decision, and you have to live with that decision. You don't come back now and say, well, it was all the city manager's fault that we made this bad decision. And the last thing I had was, I was at the meeting when James brought up the issue of this covered patio that he wanted for his neighborhood. It was like at the end of the meeting, all of a sudden he said, oh, I want to put out a thing. I want to spend, I don't remember what it was, $75,000 or $300,000 for this covered patio. There was no information brought up. There was nothing talked about. He just said, I want this. I want to do this. I want to vote on it now. And everybody went, no, we don't have the money to do that.
Mr. Crothers, if you'll wrap up, please.
Yes, that should have been the end of it right there. To bring that up now and say that you were shot down or that you didn't get support from city council, you just brought that up at the last minute and everybody just went, no, that's ridiculous. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Janet Sun with Ward 5. Good evening, council and staff. I've been in construction for the last 45, 50 years. And doing that, I have to handle a lot of money. I have to handle a lot of details. And I have been in different businesses, that multi-billion-dollar businesses, multi-million-dollar businesses. And they all have to constantly update their systems, their accounting systems, their processes. That is, that's just part of doing business. And that, I believe, should have been addressed way before, and there should have been more iterations of the processes, the accounting. I know it costs a lot of money to change things, and it's hard on staff to have to go through and implement those changes. But I think that if those changes had been addressed prior to all of this, and these things would have come up before, these costs should have been taken care of years ago. The system would have been running better. I think things would be running more smoothly and we wouldn't have this deficit. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Chuck Swain. I'm from Ward 5. I listened to this tonight and I have to tell you, I totally respect Jennifer because 5, 6 years ago, I thought the city was going bankrupt. A lot of bad decisions, a lot of debt, a lot of issues. That's why the real estate taxes are higher, the water's higher, everything's higher. They had to do something to go forward. It's hard to operate an efficient business like a city where you have so many employees. James, I don't know what you are, but you remind me of nitpicking attorneys just trying to find something to raise a big stink about to win a lawsuit. You ought to have a Monday morning podcast for a football season. You'd be great being a Monday morning quarterback. Overall for the city council, you have a tough job. I still think you're a little bit off base. If I had my way, every week you'd all take a lie detector test so we could tell what were you telling us was true and what was just a bunch of BS. This is all because of the trash deal. But anyways, Jennifer's done a great job. If she wasn't here, I'd be moving because she's got the city and she's holding it together.
I'm David Beacom, Ward 5. First, I was very disappointed to see my 2 representatives chose not to come to this meeting. So I was very disappointed there. It was advertised that James was going to present proof and evidence. I heard a lot of words. I saw no proof, no evidence. So that's a disappointment. The other piece of that is that he brought up studies, not study sessions, executive sessions on 5 or 6 occasions. And he knows that those are private meetings. We cannot get to the tapes, and I think the tapes are only kept for 6 months. And I don't know if his referencing them violates the executive session and makes them public documents. I think that's an issue that the attorney is going to have to look at to see if he's voided out some of your executive sessions issues with privacy. The other thing is that I heard very often how much you represent the people. Historically, I haven't seen that as a fact. So I think that's something that you need to take to heart and start doing and letting us know what's going on before it's happened, not after. And right now I find it interesting that used to be just the dais between the council and the people. Now you got an additional barrier. Doesn't speak well for wanting to communicate and be transparent with the citizens of Broomfield. You might think about the image that you present as being behind the wall, afraid of the people. It would be good that if the council could focus on Broomfield's needs, not state and national issues. Take care of us, the residents, then worry about the rest of the state, the rest of the nation. If I heard correctly, James was referred to as an attorney or a lawyer. It's my understanding that James is a law school graduate, not a licensed attorney. So you might bear that into mind the next time you comment on that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, staff, and all you fun people here. I'm Elizabeth Law Evans. I live in the very oddly named Northmore Estates, which is in Ward 1. I have two process questions that I would like council to consider asking of staff or whomever. The first one, as Mr. Beacom just stated, is if a council member is allowed to divulge what is said in executive session, previous executive sessions, how on earth can you have open, frank, and productive discussions in any executive session ever again? Because that's where things really get hashed out, at least in my experience and understanding. So I would respectfully request that council consider the ramifications of those statements. My second process question is, I think I heard reference, I didn't take notes, but I think I heard reference to some sort of an executive process committee of council members. And it's my understanding that meetings like that need to be publicly noticed and held in a public venue. And I can find no record of that on the city's website that I was just looking at. So I would very much like to know if that meets Colorado Open Records meetings standards and case law. And I think that even if they're by some miracle, those meetings have already met that, I would request as a member of the public that you consider noticing those meetings and having them in a public venue for the public to be able to come and observe as well. They're certainly of interest to the general public. So thank you all for your service. I appreciate it very much.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, City Staff, and Manager Hoffman. What it appears here to some of us is we have a failure to communicate. Cool hand Luke quote. This open meeting, I think, was wonderful. Some have said it embarrasses them or makes them uncomfortable. I think in the Greek culture, ancient Greeks would call this a cathartic experience. I don't know about you, but I feel great that we're beginning to communicate with each other. This is the way we should be talking as human beings, honestly. I haven't heard any politics here. That's great. That's great. No politics, just honestly how you feel about things, whether you have data or don't have data, what you think. That's a good cathartic experience for us all. And to hear your opinions, Council and Manager Hoffman, has been wonderful. It hasn't been painful. This is life. We don't always agree with each other, but we can do so respectfully. And that's what I have observed tonight, respect. So to the respect. So this open meeting is not a problem, but rather greatly appreciated by those citizens seeking the truth. I think I can agree with Heather in her comments earlier. We all have fallen down as citizens in not watching this council and the manager and the city more carefully. It's on us. We're the payers, we're the owners. It's on us. It's on us. We need to be more engaged. And that's what it's wonderful to see all of you here for. So seeking the truth is really what I think most of us really want at the end of the day. And one truth is that I have seen, and I come to these meetings because I'm very interested in fiscal responsibility of this council. And I believe what you said, the buck stops with you. I think we have a very good manager, but the manager is limited by what the council does. And to that point, I have seen repetitively the council come up with a working budget and then come up with some great ideas and projects and so on and so forth that are added during the course of the year, which some are justifiable, perhaps in my mind, some are not, but you already have a budget. And it seems to me the council doesn't seem to understand that a budget is something you work within, not something that you add to.
Please wrap up your
And
comments.
so for me, maybe I've missed something here. My observation has been that repeatedly, Manager Hoffman has been the adult in the room saying, that's not in our budget. Now,
Thank you for
I want an adult in the room, and I have my heartfelt thanks to Manager Hoffman for her forthrightness, and she has my full support.
Thank you for your comments.
Quentin Salyer, Ward 4. I've been coming to these meetings for nearly a year and a half, and I think this is the second time I spoke this week and second time I spoke in a year and a half. From meetings I've held in the White House to U.S. Congress to testifying before Congress to meeting with you all for coffee, I am not more fond of one single person than I am of Manager Jennifer Hoffman. She's been a mentor in my life. She's been a mentor in many people's lives. And I think that she guides this organization with more tenacity, with more judgment than any other person that I've ever seen lead anything. And as a youth member of this community, we don't want to see divisiveness. That's one thing that Broomfield, we brag about. We're not divided. We're not a divided council. We don't yell at each other. If you've ever seen that council guy in Detroit that just goes crazy all the time. We don't do that stuff here. Manager Hoffman is a part of that. She needs to be respected. She doesn't need her name muddied in the water for stuff that hasn't been brought up before. And everything that was brought up tonight is evidence. Only members that were called out are members that are not present to speak for themselves about private conversations that they've had. Other times it was referenced as the whole council. So I ask you to think for yourself when you go and you dismember her name because you are the part of the blunt force. You're the reason why everyone's here is because it's not just yourself, but we don't like the divisiveness. We've come here for years because we support you guys. We vote you in. We vote you in to keep Manager Hoffman, City Attorney Rogers, Judge Bachman, all of them. So quit the divisiveness because soon you're going to see that members are getting angry. Community members are getting angry because we love you guys. We support you guys, but not when it becomes divisive and ugly for no reason other than to try and clear your name while dragging someone else's down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council, staff. Thank you for having this. I do agree that in the vast majority of cases, personnel matters should always be kept private. They should be an executive session. They should be discussed. However, something of this nature does need to be aired in public because it became public. Now, anytime you use a city council email, a state email, you should assume it's going to be on Fox News tonight, the front page of the Denver Post tomorrow, and they're going to slant it to make it look as bad as possible. That is the nature of CORA. That is the nature of the Freedom of Information Act. You always assume everything you do has the brightest light shined on it, and you need to respect that. Now, a lot of things I heard today, I agree with, and I agree with the passion of everybody. I even agree, Councilmember Marsh Holshan does need to make sure that if he's not getting the information he needs from the city manager, he needs to ask. He needs to ask again. He needs to get with his council members, say, we need this. And the council members as a body need to come together and say, yes, we're not getting what we need, and hold the city manager responsible. That's what a policy-making body does. Emphasis on that word body. One council member does not dictate how any of the staff, whether it's the city manager, whether it's a city attorney, whether it's the city judge. One council member can't do that. 4 council members can't do that. It takes 6 or more, or 5 with the vote of the mayor. So I really appreciate what I've heard about speaking as a body. I appreciate it's being out here in the open just because it's been brought up. Thank you so much. I live in the Ward 3 part of first filing, the longest alley in Broomfield. And thank you so much for getting rid of most of the trash trucks. I can get out of my garage now. So I really appreciate single hauler system and have been advocating it for 20 years because I have lived here since the mid 80s. So thank you very much. And one process suggestion, when the timer gets down to 10 minutes instead of magenta, it should be bright red and it starts beeping. And when it hits 0, start getting louder and louder to tell people their time is up. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good evening, Bruce Peterman, Ward 4. I really wasn't going to say anything tonight because I didn't do my homework. Because I didn't get here early enough to listen to this. It was a night I was really going to sit back and absorb some of those fundamentals that to hear in this interaction. I'll say a couple little things. As part of homework, and I hope I've been up here a couple times and referenced things, mostly to music or to silly TV shows. However, common sense is at an all-time low with heavy trading. Someone here should know who said that. I can't be the only one. It's 1984. It's off an album, a revolutionary album, by a man and by a man named Gil Scott-Heron. If you do not know Gil Scott-Heron, I urge you to go look it up. That music is revolutionary. It's fundamental. And much like Frank Zappa, it has something to say. A lot of things get said. One of the other quotes I like to say is there are no new jokes, just new audiences. So if you put that into context sometimes, think about what we're saying here. Focus on the problem, not on the people. Get the job done. I don't care if you can't get along at the end of the day. I used to yell at my kids about getting their homework done. Still do. And I got one that's 30 years old, still in college, and another one that's really trying to, like 2 classes away from finishing a bachelor's degree. So sometimes I tread lightly around both of them because I'm trying to let them find their own way. But ultimately, they've got to get their homework. Be factual, be resilient in your opinions, that's fine. But we've got to pull together. I think everybody here, their very presence here is tantamount to providing that feedback to council. And I agree with, I think it was Dave that said, I'd like to see this go. I know why I came in here because I was in there a couple of the meetings when somebody was running around creating problems, but this is BS. So I'll end it at that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fernandez, we've been at this before. You are number 16, which would mean that you would have 2 minutes, but I think you are the last person, so I'm gonna.
No one else? Okay, well,
I'm gonna
I
give you 3
appreciate the
minutes, okay?
latitude, Mayor Pro Tem.
Of course.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and City Manager. Rick Fernandez, I'm from Broomfield Heights neighborhood. Actually, it came in a little late because I had another event and wanted to get over here as soon as I can, so I appreciate the public for being here. What I want to really go with that is to say this is a community, that Broomfield is a community. I've lived here my entire life. I've seen this city grow from a blip on the radar between Denver and Boulder. That's the way we all kind of refer to it. You could just blink and you were past it as you go down 36. I've been coming to council meetings for longer than I want to admit. Been involved civically and just as an active citizen for a huge amount of time. And I'd say this is the most emotionally charged meeting that I've been to, and I've been to a few. Think back to oil and gas discussions. I think back to a number of things that have happened. This is the most emotionally charged meeting that I can remember. And since we're making maybe some movie references, I'll quote one of my movies, which is Christmas Vacation, and say, what an incredible waste of resources this is. I think back to the meetings that have been held on this topic. I think of, imagine the staff time that's been spent on this. When the city is facing water issues, it's facing budget issues, it's facing growth issues. I'm part of a 501c4 called Broomfield Taxpayer Matters, and we ask hard questions. And I will say this to the staff. They have been absolutely gracious with us every single time. We've disagreed on things, but there's always been a dialogue. And I attribute that to the city manager for that. And I would also say this, how many communities do you know of that know who their city manager is? Not very many. And how many know what their city manager actually contributes to? I think we've got a long history of very good city managers in Broomfield. It's you guys working together that makes Broomfield what it is. Tearing things down, having power fights, and taking steps to basically destroy what you appear on the surface to be building is not what is best for Broomfield. What's best for Broomfield is the people in this room working as a community. I'm disappointed. And I think of the heritage of the council members that have been at that dais over the years that I remember. This is not Broomfield, and it needs to change.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Well, I thank all the members of the public for standing for speaking, for showing up tonight. I just want to recognize that there are a significant amount of staff members in here as well tonight. I'm not going to put you on the spot that I want you to stand up to be recognized, but for those of you that are public and that have spoken in appreciation for our staff, if you'll just thank them. Thank you. Well, now, council, we are to council discussion and questions. Are there any comments or questions at this point? Councilmember Lim.
Well, there was a question raised about the process. So there were statements made about what was stated previously in executive session. So would the attorney like to, I suppose it would be the attorney who would say something about whether or not that was appropriate, since this is an executive session, I think.
I won't judge if it's appropriate or not, but I don't think it breaches the confidentiality that was the reason for the meeting when we held it. Those are personnel discussions. It's a little bit different than the ones we have for attorney-client discussions. If one of you did disclose attorney-client privilege information, potentially the privilege has been destroyed and that information can get public. It's a little bit different when we're talking about personnel matters. The topic being a personnel matter can be held in a closed exec session. We do keep personnel matters confidential. So I think a few things. I think the meeting at the time was appropriate and it was held for the right reason. It was confidential. It was held in exec session appropriately. The record is 90 days. David, you were close. 90 days for those records. Now, whether or not it was appropriate to bring in that information sort of ties to the scope of this meeting, and that would be for, I think, council to address.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Ms. Law Evans did make another question about the executive oversight committee, I think is how some people have described it. So I will talk about what I know, and then I'll let Ms. Rogers answer some of the more legal questions. That was a committee stood up by City Council, recognizing that there were some on council who had more expertise with C-suite or executive style kind of oversight. That really being Councilmember Leslie because of his experience in higher education, being a college president, et cetera. It was comprised of 3 people. So it did not need to necessarily be noticed, but it was held in public. However, that committee was disbanded. A number of
July of 2024.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. So that committee no longer exists. We deemed it as a body ineffective and not living up to the expectations that we had hoped. So it no longer exists. But Ms. Rogers, if there's any other legal issues you'd like to talk about in terms of notice and when things have to be noticed, when things have to be open to the public, et cetera.
Right. Thank you, Councilmember Ward, and thank you for the question, Ms. Law Evans. It is between 3 and 5 council members, so less than a quorum. The meeting has to be open, but it doesn't need to be noticed. And we talked about this when we convened the committee because we almost had it as 2 people and we thought that wouldn't be effective. So we did make sure to have it in a place that it was in this building. We would meet in one of the, usually the lower conference room if we could, or the upstairs conference room. The staff at the front desk was aware that we were meeting. They were there to direct everybody, but Councilmember Ward, you were correct. It wasn't required to be noticed. There's also this other provision in that applies to counties because counties have day-to-day direct supervision over their county managers that allow those direct supervision meetings to not have to take place in public. So we have we had a couple options here because we were trying to address this issue of day-to-day supervisions and more meetings, but they were open. We did hold them in an open place.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. The next question that I have, we're just going to bring up the water rates because that's really the whole basis for this. Ms. Hoffman, I remember in 22, the first time I ever had experience with the Water Enterprise Fund and looking at that going, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with this. Why was the information that was provided in that 2022 study so much different than in the 2024 study? I assume, like most mathematical equations and statistics and whatnot, they're really good at giving you information, but it depends on what type of information you put in. And so if we didn't have either the right information because we were operating under a different principle, that being run to fail, like we had been for 20 years, that would produce a different outcome than if we had said, well, maybe we should actually do preventative maintenance. Can you kind of walk me through why those numbers were so different?
Yes, and when we're looking at 2019, 2020, and 2021, we did not have a repeatable process for how we reviewed or analyzed. It's not just having a system failure. It was an overall process that it was siloed. The right hand was not informing what the left hand was doing. When our community was growing up, so to speak, and we had a lot of opportunity for growth, taking higher level risks were more accommodating than when you get close to grow out. So a lot of the systems were newer between 2010 and 2016. A lot of the pipes were newer. The infrastructure was newer. It's a complicated answer, and it's not one that we try to convolute. At no point did we have information that we were not sharing or withholding. It was a process of, we had a new public works director, and contrary to opinion, there's some council members that are in the room right now that can attest to this. Prior to 2019, let me clarify, run to fail. Run to fail didn't mean the entire system. Infrastructure in and of itself, from a mechanical perspective, you run to fail. You run to fail light bulbs. You run to fail a whole host of items that are listed, and they were listed manually. Thousands of pages of what needed to be replaced and when it needed to be replaced. So the system as a whole, that's where the transparency lacks, not because we wanted to be less transparent, but simply because you're working in a spreadsheet world. So not only from an ERP system, the last 5 years for all of us have been getting a public works director and a public works team and prioritizing that, ensuring that we had a finance department that understood infrastructure and the enterprise, that we had an economist that was able to forecast and understand what planning, growth, development, impacts, all of which had to become part of the model, a repeatable process that we could go through every single year and put additional data in. So when we're looking at something in 2022, I was reminded consistently over the last 12 months, city managers lose their job over enterprise funds. Got it. That's why we're all here. Understanding also that when you come to a place to where you understand that not making these difficult decisions, regardless of what that impact is, you have to be able to have a totality of a team. So when I say 200 people have worked tirelessly every day for the last 3 years, I mean it. The components between 2022 and 2024 were knowledge, data, the ability to have forecasts for the amount of growth that we were having, and also shifting the composition between focusing on new development, new roads, new apartments, new homes, to taking care of what we had, the asset management. Broomfield didn't have to have a prioritization, if you will, for taking care of what we had, because it was boom. We came out of the recession and we went Mach 5 coming out of the recession. Staffing didn't keep up with that Mach 5 with regards to the development. We're not even staffed up where we need to staff up for our public works crew. So when we continue to say, we need this and we need this and we need this and we need this, and we don't have the staffing, we have to develop the structure. I'm hoping that everyone in the audience, other than staff, I wouldn't expect you guys to come next Tuesday night. But that fundamentally is the first quarterly update that we'll continue to have from here to eternity on what transparency looks like, what recovery looks like, what building a reputation of transparency and truth looks like with regards to our most important asset, which is our enterprise funds. I wish there was a silver bullet answer to be able to say, we should have known and we didn't know. I can fundamentally say with every ounce of integrity that I have right now, there was no conceivable way that this leadership team that we have had developing over the last 3 years should have known more than we knew. As soon as we knew, we brought the information. We brought the information knowing that there would be a chasm between what we delivered from an information perspective in 2022 and what we delivered in 2024. Those years were spent pulling levers because we did not want to impact our residents. So we said, let's have development, which is a misnomer, pay for itself. Note to self, development never pays for itself. Why we continue to anticipate that development paid for itself, again, ideologically, it set us up to think that all of this new was going to be paid for by the development, and it wasn't. Development pays for what they need right now, and then we have to maintain that. That was a gap. It was a gap for us to understand and to, again, build that in from a model forum format. So we pulled the lever. The lever we pulled was, let's increase water tap fees so that development can pay for itself and not have the base rate increase so that our residents don't have to have this impetus. And then that way we can do what our surrounding communities did, which is let's just do it a little bit at a time and it'll be smoother for everyone. It's not the case. We had too much growth, we had too much development, we had too much time that was not spent on asset management. It was a triple whammy. So when we pulled the lever for tap fees, the following year, we said consumption. Tap fees didn't get us to where we needed to be. Meanwhile, we're understanding what all of those other elements and components were. Parallel path. We had about 5 different things that were happening all at the same time, which is why it's a more complex answer. We go for consumption. Consumption means the more water you use, the more you're going to pay. Thinking again, falsely, ignorantly, and that I will absolutely own. I should have acted swifter, knowing that the tap fee increase and that the consumption was not going to be enough in order to not impact our residents. Without a doubt. So when we pulled the consumption and said, we're going to charge more and we're going to tier it, the more you use, the more you pay. Not wanting to get to the place to where we had to get to last year, which was it has to be the base. All of the other accoutrements will never get us to where we need to be. So we do the tap fees, not enough. We do consumption, not enough. The reason the jump was historically high precipitation the year that we pulled the trigger to say, we're going to charge for consumption. And it rained and rained and rained and rained. And everybody was like, oh my God, this is so fantastic. It's raining. And for our finance department and our public works, we were thinking, holy guacamole. Compounded with those tap fees and development because of the inflation, because of the supply chain, because of unprecedented declines, it was a combination. It was a lethal combination. So development drops, tap fee revenues drop. Precipitation is off of the hook, revenue drops. We get all of that information, we drop it into a new format with AECom, who is able to take all of our data, that is spreadsheet data, they put it in a mechanical form, and it spits out, this is what you need to do. At that moment, we knew there's no conceivable way that we will be able to not impact our residents. Meanwhile, we're getting a host of questions, rightly so, from our community and from council saying, show me this, show me this, show me this, show me this, and show me this. While we're trying to figure all of this out, we were running ragged, trying to make that happen. And we didn't make the mark. We're doing everything in our power now as we move forward to be able to be as transparent as possible, to be able to communicate early and often. And I have to say I don't remember where my glasses or contacts when I'm up here, so I don't get distracted, but the Citizen Advisory Committee is really going to help us transform. And those folks that have been organic, Councilmember Ward, that were our greatest, most vocal, loud, criticism abound, but they were Broomfield. And in Broomfield, we don't throw stones. We say, how we're going to work this. We're frustrated, we're irritated, as much as staff was. But they helped us see through all of those components in order to get to where we were. There were no gotcha moments. There was a path of how do we come out of this stronger and more resilient, but most importantly with a plan, a sustainable plan that allows all of us to understand, may not like it, may have to swallow hard, but the juice is in that base budget that we have to be able to be consistent with delivering clean, drinkable water. That's a much longer answer than you wanted, but I really appreciate you asking.
No, Manager Hoffman, I am happy you provided that answer because I don't have the time length to provide the answer that you did. I only have 5 minutes. So I'm happy to let you do it. I'm happy to let you do it where you have unlimited time. And just as a quick follow-up question on that, Council has asserted that he wasn't getting the information he wanted. And you had commented that in the middle of trying to get everything prepared for council, you were having, I don't even remember how many community meetings we had. It was what, at least 5, 7, something like that. Plus however many resident emails you all were getting that council wasn't seeing. I don't know what that looked like. I can imagine it would be challenging to get everyone the information. But the next question that I have, which you kind of mentioned, was the silo. When you were the assistant city and county manager, you oversaw what departments?
This feels like such a cop-out. When I say this, but again, the council members that are in the audience will know this. Our structure was some people could touch public works and finance and community development, and I wasn't one of them. There was not ever a time to where, and to be honest with you, I wasn't saying, hey, let me at the table. I had the super fun department. As I look out at all of our staff there, but the impactful ones, when I took over in 2019, I had no finance, no public works, no community development. I still, I know that this council inherited me, but But I think the reason that I was selected as a city county manager, council member Ward, was because I was Broomfield. And they knew that eventually I would get my chops. So again, it is a misnomer to say simply because I have been here for 25 years that I should have known. That's just not the case. In fact, the team that we have compiled within the first 8 months of my tenure, we had a sweeping change on council. I walked into dealing with oil and gas. COVID immediately after, and we had a 30-year city manager, 25-year deputy manager, HR director, finance director, IT director, and a police chief that were all gone within an 8-month period of time. And you have a city manager that had no finance, community development, or public works. And so to think that we were trauma bonded here through COVID, what we've been able to accomplish, this staff, in 3 years is absolutely, fundamentally the best experience I've had professionally and personally. You have a AAA team.
And I would completely agree with that. I asked that question only because I wanted to show for the community and Councilmember Marsh-Holston and the rest of council, those here and not here, that to walk into public works, community development, finance, without any of that experience. I mean, when I walked on council, I think I was drinking from the fire hose for at least a year. And I don't even get into the nitty gritty that you have to deal with. So I can't even fathom how long it took you to really get your feet underneath you. And then I want to point out that we've had 2 public works directors since I've been on council.
Mm-hmm.
The current director of public works, Ken Rutt, has been on since early 2023, roughly. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Rutt, much like yourself, was siloed into what we call the dry side of public works, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And he had no experience with the wet side, which is the enterprise fund, correct?
No, just actually and I'm looking at, now that I'm looking out at you all, we have a lot of staff here. I think we have a lot of the utility crew here. Ken Rutt and Jeff Ruger, Sean DeSole, they've been here 30 plus years. When we talk about silos, from not only from departments, but divisions, you got the information that you needed at the time to do the job. The totality of circumstances is anew to the environment in city, county, Broomfield for the organization, and probably about we've been able to do it in the last 36 months. So while Ken had background in operation, daily operation, the leadership and overseeing and how each one of those impacted, it's very different. It's very different to forecast and understand the level of development than dropping pipes.
Great. My time for my first 5 minutes is up, so I will wait for a second round with anything else that I have.
I apologize. Did I?
No, it's.
Am I okay? My time isn't counting on yours.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
We'd be well over if that
Sorry
was the
about
case, which is totally fine.
Thank you, Councilmember Ward. Is there any other council member questions, comments? Seeing none. Oh, Councilmember Anderson, just in time.
Well, I appreciate the questions from Councilmember Ward, and I feel like we've just went back over what we just went over the past couple of years. So it's nice to hear the recap of all the challenges we face. So I don't actually have any questions, but I just want to address the one piece that our attorney couldn't address, and that was the appropriateness of when we go into executive sessions. And I just want to say for the audience that when we go into executive session, I expect those conversations to be held in confidence. And I just want to share that because I think we have a discussion to be had, because the comment was made by, I forget who made the comment, but when we then enter into the next executive session, we're going to be reserved in the comments that we make, and we are going to lose open dialogue. So I just want, that is more just a comment for the public, a comment for us. And I actually don't have any further questions, and my comments remain the same. I think we need to get past this challenge, and it's been very frustrating, and I fully support our city and county manager. We've come a long, long ways over these past few years, and I think we need to just stay focused on the work we need to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to comment on the executive session. I did have a conversation with Manager Attorney Rogers about tonight. And it was my understanding that because it was a personnel issue related to Manager Hoffman, that previous executive sessions were acceptable to be discussed. That was my understanding. It was not my intent to bring up anything else. That was just my understanding for what, because tonight was specifically about personnel related to Manager Hoffman, that previous conversations were okay to be brought up. I absolutely agree with some of the comments tonight. Many of the comments made by my colleagues as well as community. This was a failure of communication. Absolutely. I do want to disagree with Councilmember Ward on one thing. He mentioned that the council review committee was disbanded by council. It's not technically true. Council, per charter, council acts by ordinance, resolution, or motion. The decision to disband that committee was never brought before council. It was kind of just communicated to us in an email. And I did protest that at the time. I did think that was a mistake. That's not here, there. That's just a technical thing. But Councilmember Leslie, Hinkle, and Cohen, who are not here tonight, did send an email to all of council last week proposing that we revisit that and find a better way to move forward, specifically for the issue of bringing real-time issues in real time rather than waiting for the out of the year. So I support that. I look forward with my colleagues to moving forward with that. The fact is, council is elected by the people to represent the people. It is our job we hire city county manager, city county attorney, and the judge. Judge is slightly different, but we hire the attorney and the manager to act on the people's behalf. It is our job to oversee them collectively, but it is also our responsibility as individual council members to bring issues to light as we see them. As I said, this was not my intention to bring this all out like this. I know several people have said this was a good thing, but I would be negligent in my duty as a council member if I didn't bring to light issues that I see. Whether or not any of my colleagues agree with those issues, it's my duty to bring those forward. And there's a process. And where I will take responsibility is that the process did break down a little bit. I could have been more forceful earlier. The issues with the information that I did not believe I was receiving, I could have been more forceful on that. I sent several emails. I almost sent a call request. I could have been more forceful. That is lesson learned for the next time. But it is our job to hold those accountable. Those individuals that we hire to work on your behalf, hold them accountable. So, and I do appreciate Manager Hoffman's statements tonight in, I feel, taking responsibility for some of the issues that were related to the water rates that were my biggest concerns, and the lapses in communication. I do think that we can do better. We will do better. I will say at this moment right now, my opinions have not changed. But as I've reached out to Manager Hoffman several times during this whole process, I am always willing to work with anybody and discuss and have open dialogue and frank discussions, and that hasn't changed. And if council chooses to not make any changes in those we hire, that is council's decision. And I will do my best to work with everybody and to move forward as best as we can, best as possible. So that's all, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward, we're on the second round. You got 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to recap for the community, knowing that this probably is the end of the meeting. You've heard many things tonight from Councilmember Marsh-Holshan, from Manager Hoffman, and from those of us up on City Council. I think, in my opinion, I'll let you all form your opinion. There is no basis for the accusations that Councilmember Marsh-Holshan has levied. We all acknowledge there was a failure of communication. That was quite apparent. But I don't think he has substantiated his claims for gross negligence, purposeful sabotage, or mismanagement. I know some of you didn't like that this was being done in public, but Councilmember Marsh-Holshan made comments in public, and to not address those comments publicly, I think would be a disservice to the community and leave you all wondering with questions. And therefore that necessitated this meeting being held. Manager Hoffman has my full support in continuing the leadership of the City and County of Broomfield. And I hope that going forward, we can adhere to the process that we currently have. Councilmember Marsh-Holshan has stated, well, the process isn't there, it needs to be changed, and then states, well, we have a process. That process is you talk with the individual you have an issue with. If it's not resolved, you bring it to council, and we have a procedure set forth in our rules and procedures in our charter of how to bring forth new meetings and executive sessions in which to address this as a body. None of that has been adhered to by Councilmember Marsh-Holshan. Councilmember Marsh-Holshan also says he is willing to have open and frank conversations with anyone. I'll leave you all to figure that out yourself. And with that, Mayor Pro Tem, I am finished.
Thank you, Councilmember Ward. Any other questions, comments from my council colleagues? All right, just want to wrap up one thing with the attorney. So there's been a lot of conversation about executive session, privileged conversations. Can you just clarify this for our council as well as our public?
So they're not privileged conversations, they're confidential conversations. And they were confidential at the time. The scope of this meeting was personnel matters. So related to the scope, I do think information that was divulged or shared in an executive session could be discussed this evening. Now, whether it was appropriate as far as what specifically was said by certain people or what positions they took in an executive session, that's really for council to determine. But Councilmember Marsh-Holshan was accurate when he said the scope is personnel. That gets into sort of the historic personnel discussions we've had. As long as it's within the scope of the meeting, I mean, this is still personnel. But that goes to my worldview, which is it lawful? Was it confidential at the time? Now it's for council to determine if it was appropriate. And just to Councilmember Anderson, to your comment, what will the impact be on our future confidential executive sessions?
Thank you for clarifying that. So this matter that started with the disclosure of Councilmember Marsh-Holshan's email, the vote on formal censure, and now this public personnel discussion about the language used in that email is now concluded. The accusations made in that email are meritless and are lacking credibility. They were harmful and damaging. I'm hopeful that we as a council, as an organization, as a community can move forward from this incident. I believe the statements of a majority of my council colleagues here this evening have set the tone for how we are going to proceed with personnel issues in the future. This meeting tonight is not about personnel matters. This meeting tonight is not how personnel matters should be handled. This is not how disagreements between individuals should be handled. We will make an attempt to return to a professional and respectful process by providing to Manager Hoffman and other providing feedback to Manager Hoffman and other employees. The majority of this council supports our city and county manager, Jennifer Hoffman, and we greatly benefit from the work of your staff. We will strive to reflect the professionalism that our community expects from its elected officials. We will pull together and continue to keep Broomfield the best community in Colorado and one in which we are all so proud to live, to work, and to play. That concludes the item on this evening's special meeting agenda, and the special meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a great night.